What is going on, everyone? My name is Turk. This is Level 1 News, and I wanted to give my reaction to Nintendo announcing the SNES Classic Edition. Now, this is going to be kind of like a continuation of my previous video that I made a little while ago, and I feel like this is going to tie in very closely with what I did before. So if you're interested in to see like where I'm coming from with this video now, go ahead and check out that video, and you'll be able to see why the SNES Classic is a story that I'm particularly interested in. Alright, so just to go over the basics, I'm sure you all know the SNES Classic Edition was announced a little while ago. It's $80, there's 21 games on the thing. I'm not going to go over the list of games, you guys already probably know it, so I'm not really going to get into it. The only one interesting thing really about the library of games is the fact that they announced that Star Fox 2 is going to be in it, and Star Fox 2 is of course a game that has never been released before. So this is definitely some really interesting news for Nintendo fans in particular, with Star Fox 2 coming out with the SNES Classic. I see lots of videos online right now of everyone talking about how, hyped they are for the SNES Classic, and they're talking about like the games library on, oh, which games should they have put in there, and like, oh, they're missing this game and that game or whatever. And I really feel like none of that shit really matters, because the majority of people who want to get an SNES Classic will not be able to get one, and the situation is going to be even worse than the NES Classic, which I had a lot of trouble with trying to get one, and I wasn't able to get one before they discontinued it. I feel like the shortages this time will be even worse. There's going to be even more people trying to get this thing. It's going to be like there's going to be so many people who are going to be pissed off once this thing goes on sale, because they're not going to be able to get one. There's going to be so many people who want this thing, and they're not going to be able to get it. And I have a bunch of clues as to why this is going to happen, and I have a theory as to why Nintendo even puts out these classic consoles in the first place with all these shortages. But before I get into that, one of the first clues that I saw when they first announced the SNES Classic was that Kotaku did kind of ask Nintendo. They asked them, will there be lots of shortages this time, because the NES Classic Edition, there was lots of shortages, and a lot of people who wanted to get one couldn't get one, right? And I'm gonna quickly read exactly what they said in response to that. And this is like Nintendo's PR speech, basically. And this is the quote. "We aren't providing specific numbers, but we will produce significantly more units of Super NES Classic Edition than we did of NES Classic Edition." So that right there, that basically doesn't mean shit to me, because they're not giving real numbers. There's no way to know for sure whether they're telling the truth. I'm sure they probably will be a bit more, but what does significantly more mean? That could mean anything, really. But really the big clue in this statement is the fact that within like one or two sentences later, they immediately went over to start talking about the Switch. And here's the quote here. "Our long-term efforts are focused on delivering great games for the Nintendo Switch system and continuing to build momentum for that platform." And they basically go on to talk about how much the 3DS is selling, and they're basically what they're trying to say is our main focus is on the Switch and the 3DS, and it's not really about the SNES Classic, right? So that right there, in the announcement of the SNES Classic, they immediately start talking about the Switch. People are like trying to ask questions about the SNES Classic, and they start talking about the Switch, they start talking about the 3DS, and they're not giving any straight answers. So that's one major clue right there as to why this situation is going to get really bad. But there's more to it than that. Even if Nintendo does put out a significantly more consoles, it's not really going to matter, because this time around there's so many people who were expecting the SNES Classic to be announced, and they're so ready to get their pre-orders in. They're so ready to buy this thing on day one. And it might be a weird thing to compare to, but the NES Classic Edition, when it was first announced, it was kind of announced out of nowhere, right? Like, nobody was really expecting that thing, so not a lot of people knew how to react. Yeah, a lot of people thought it was cool, whatever, but so many people had no idea that there was going to be this many shortages, that it was going to be this much of a hot item, that people were lining out the door in so many stores to actually buy this thing. And we all know this now, so everyone is going into this thing with this expectation that this is going to be a really hot item. You're not going to be able to find it. You better get in your pre-orders. You better do whatever you can to get this thing. And the thing is, it's not just hardcore fans. It's not just Nintendo fans. We're talking about it's also casual gamers. Even people who aren't gamers, even people who don't play video games, are going to want to buy this thing because it was all over the news. Everyone knew about the NES Classic Edition, and now everyone knows about the SNES Classic Edition, and everyone's going to try to buy this thing all at the same time, and it's just going to be a really, really bad situation. A lot of people are not going to be able to buy this thing, and a lot of people are going to be really upset about it. And the other factor in all this is the people who weren't able to buy the NES Classic Edition last year. And I feel like there's a lot of people who kind of have like this pent up like frustration that they weren't able to get the NES Classic last time, and now this time around they're like, oh, I'm definitely gonna get it this time. I'm gonna be watching the pre-order pages. I'm going to do whatever it takes to get this thing. And I feel like there's a lot of people like that. They're going to like do whatever it takes this time to get an SNES Classic Edition, and not to mention that the games are better and it's going to be a more sought after item in the first place. So because of all that, the pre-orders, they're going to sell out in 2 seconds. There's going to be lines at Best Buy and other stores like way out the door. These lines are going to be probably crazy, and the situation is just going to get completely out of control. And we saw that with the NES Classic, and it's just going to be even worse this time around. And on top of all of this, the scalpers, they're going to be out there. They're going to be trying to get as many of these things as possible, and they're probably going to want to try to sell this thing for even more money than the NES Classic was going on the secondhand market. The prices for the SNES Classic on the secondhand market will probably be like $400-$500, probably even more. So it's going to be like the cost of like a new console, really. It's like going to be the cost of like an Xbox One X or a PlayStation 4 Pro, and it's just an SNES Classic. So the situation is going to get bad. It's going to get really bad. A lot of people are not going to be able to get this thing. There's going to be lots of shortages, and it's weird because it doesn't have to be this way. Nintendo can make enough of these products so that everyone who wants one can buy one, but they choose not to do that. Why? Why would they make such a small supply for an item that they know is going to sell like crazy, that they know is going to sell so much? They know that so many people are going to want this thing, but they choose not to make a lot of these classic consoles because there isn't that much profit in them. There isn't, console manufacturers, they don't make that much money off of hardware. This goes for Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony. They don't really make that much money on hardware. Where they make a lot of money is through software, right? So the NES Classic and the SNES Classic, Nintendo isn't making that much money off of them. There's not a lot of profit margin there for them to want to make a lot of these things, right? They could sell millions and millions of these, right? But if they're only making a few bucks of profit for each one, then they're not really incentivized to want to make more of them, right? So then the counterpoint to that, you might say, well, then why don't they just make it more money, right? And they could easily sell this thing for $100, $120, even like $150. All of you know you would buy this thing even for $150. Don't shit yourself. But they choose not to. They don't want this thing to be expensive. They want it to be as cheap as possible. They want this thing to be as cheap as possible. Why? Because they don't want to make a profit off of this thing. Now I know what you're thinking. This guy doesn't even make any sense. This theory doesn't even make sense. How can a company want to put out a product where they don't want to make money off of it? That doesn't make sense, right? But here's the big picture in all of this. They're not interested in money with this product. They're interested in attention. This is one big attention grab for Nintendo. They're using these classic consoles to build up hype, to build up the Nintendo brand, to get people talking about them. That's what it really is all about. It's not about selling classic consoles. It's about getting in the news. And I'm not just talking about the gaming news sites. I'm not talking about even like tech websites either. They want to get into the mainstream news. They want to get into newspapers. They want to get into, you know, like USA Today. They want to get into the Today Show. They want everyone talking about this thing, not Nintendo fans, not gamers, not you know, tech people. They want everyone talking about this console. They want everyone to try to get this thing. And that's why one of the reasons why they keep the console so low, so that even people who don't even basically even care about video games would want to buy it. Just because, oh, it's the SNES Classic. Yeah, I remember that from back in the day. Sure, I'll buy one. It's only what? It's only $80. Why not, right? They do that on purpose because they want to get the news everywhere. They want to get everyone talking about Nintendo. If you need any proof, go back and look at all the announcements Nintendo has made in the past few months. Like, for example, at E3, right? They announced Metroid Prime 4. Everyone went nuts over this thing. Everyone was talking about, oh, Nintendo won E3. There were so many people doing reaction videos about Metroid Prime 4 and how so hyped they are, and like how Nintendo is doing so good now. Now go back and see all the websites that reported on Metroid Prime 4 when it was announced, right? It's all gaming sites, tech sites, and like nerd culture type sites, stuff like that. Metroid Prime 4 was a huge announcement at E3, and even a game like that couldn't get into like the mainstream news, right? But then Nintendo announces the SNES Classic, and that reaches like all news outlets, like everything, even news outlets that don't have anything to do with gaming, that don't have anything to do with tech websites or anything like that. It's basically Nintendo trying to reach a huge audience, literally the entire mainstream audience, the entire general audience for everyone. It doesn't even matter if you're interested in video games or not. They want to reach everyone. They want everyone talking about them. They want everyone to know that Nintendo has the hottest item of the season, and that it's going to be hard to find. You know, that's the kind of stuff that really builds up hype. That's the stuff that builds up the Nintendo brand. Because you got to remember that Nintendo, you know, they're still kind of pulling themselves out of the situation they got themselves into with the Wii U, right? Nintendo seems like they're doing fine now, right? But, you know, for the past like several years, they weren't doing good at all. Wii U sales were terrible. You know, their game sales weren't doing well either. So only now are they kind of like, you know, back in the spotlight, and they're using these classic consoles to really like try to help themselves, you know, really build their brand back up and get people to start talking about them again. And that's what this is really all about. And that's why I wanted to make this video, to kind of just shine a light on this situation. There's so many people who are just talking about the SNES Classic like as if, you know, oh, Nintendo's going to learn from their lesson this time, and, you know, everyone's going to be able to buy one and it's going to be fine, right? And I just don't think that is going to happen. It's going to be the same situation again. Any increase in units is going to be absorbed by the fact that there's going to be more people want this thing. More people are going to try to pre-order this thing on day one. More people are going to try to line up. The lines are going to be longer. More people are going to try to get this thing in stores. And it's just going to be a really bad situation. There's going to be so many people disappointed. There's going to be a lot of people who are not going to be able to buy this thing. So that's why I would like to say, don't buy the SNES Classic if you're a true Nintendo fan. To send a message to Nintendo that this shit is not cool. They're using shitty tactics to get attention on themselves. They're putting out a product that real Nintendo fans would actually want, but it doesn't really matter because they're not really trying to sell this product. They're trying to just advertise themselves. That's what it's really all about. And I would like to say to don't buy the NES Classic, but who am I shitting here? We're all going to try to buy it when the pre-orders go, and we're all going to try to line up when you know, stores get it. So I know like millions of people are already going to try to get it. So me boycotting it because of it isn't going to really affect anything. So it's not really about trying to get like a boycott going or anything like that. It's more about the message. It's more about like the principle that this is a shitty tactic that Nintendo is using. They're using nostalgia to try to appeal to everyone. They're trying to get everyone to buy this thing, but it's not because that they want to actually sell it. It's because they want to just build up their brand. They just want to advertise themselves. And the people who are real Nintendo fans who stuck by them by so many years, they don't actually get to buy the product that they want to buy. They just want to buy a product that kind of, you know, represents their childhood. That's all they really want. But Nintendo doesn't seem to really care about that. They just want to use this thing as a way of advertising themselves to the, you know, the mainstream audience. So that's why I made this video, to kind of put this message out there that, and you know, let my fellow Nintendo fans know that of what's really going on here. We're being jerked around, and it's not cool for a company, you know, who has like this loyal following, and you know, they don't seem to really care that much about us in this particular situation. So that's pretty much it. That's pretty much my message for this video. If you like this video and you agree with me, you know, share this video. Let other people know what's really going on here. So that's it for this video, guys. I'll probably do another video when the pre-orders go up, because I'm sure the pre-orders will sell out in like 2 seconds. I think that even maybe some of the websites will come down because of all the traffic that they're going to get. So I'll probably do a video like in response to all that. I'm sure there's going to be tons of people like bitching and complaining about how they weren't able to get one. I'll do a video, you know, talking about that whole situation, and I'm sure that's going to happen. The thing about this is that this is kind of turning into like a series for me. You know, I started just ranting about not being able to buy an NES Classic. Then there was the video when the NES Classic was discontinued, and I was, you know, venting my frustrations about that. And in that video, I started talking about the SNES Classic, and then in this video, you know, they announced the SNES Classic. So we'll see where it goes from here. I also have a few other theories about you know, where this is all going. I have a theory about the N64 Classic, and I have a theory also which kind of ties in with this about the Virtual Console and why Virtual Console is taking a long time to come to the Switch. And I have a theory about that too. So I'll make a few more videos just talking about those things too later on. So stay tuned for those. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. My name is Turk, and thank you for watching Level 1 News.